listening to the Novel Universe Podcast, a monthly YA Lit podcast hosted by Dawn Abram and Elise Martinez, YA librarians from the Chicagoland area. Each episode features reviews and rants on new and upcoming YA books. We're here to help you navigate your TBR pile. What's good, what's bad, and everything in between. I'm Dawn, the criticizer of books.
And I'm Elise, the projector of romance.
So turn up the volume, here we go. Welcome back to Read Along with the Universe, and today we'll be discussing chapters 18 to 29 of There Will Come a Darkness by Katie Rose Poole. We have to redo this because our original podcast did not record properly, so this is why it's not up on Sunday. All right, Elise, talk. Make sure that it's working.
All right, let's jump in, because I apparently was the issue here. It looks good to me.
Yeah,
that's number. All right, we're gonna jump in. Today, like Dawn said, we're gonna be doing chapters 18 to 29. So let's get started with chapter 18. Jude and Hector are meeting the sentry captain in the city of Pallas Athos. I'm so bad with these names. It's like not even fun.
I'm worse.
Ooh, Jude gets a rude awakening in this chapter. This is the first time that we, as the reader, begin to see him kind of question this order that he's been literally raised to lead at some point. The sentry captain tells him that, like, the city basically went to shit when you guys left, and we felt abandoned, and now you're back and you just expect us to pick up where we left off. Like, that's not how this is going to work. So he questions whether that was the right choice to make. And then they discuss the rumor that the Hierophant was once an acolyte of the temples of Pallas. This is a big deal that I think is obviously going to come back later in the book as we do discover who this guy really is. It's important to note here, though, that Jude doesn't necessarily believe them. And then later in the chapter, an alarm sounds and notifies them that one of their prisoners has escaped, and Hector apprehends the prisoner and recognizes who it is.
Yeah. So I am going to say that the Hierophant was an acolyte of the temple, just because why wouldn't he be?
Mm-hmm,
I don't know. It just seems like, why would she put that in there if it wasn't true?
And there's stuff that comes up later in this, like, chunk of chapters that is like, yeah, he totes was, which we'll get to.
Oh,
yep.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Katie Rose, I'm just going to start calling her Katie Rose, she kind of hinted in chapter 7 that we learned that Hector is from Charis, and then in chapter 7 Barut is talking about how her family, her and her sister, were orphaned on Charis Island. So it was hinted that they kind of knew each other, their paths had crossed. So that's, I like how authors kind of like plant stuff ahead of time and not just like shock and awe. I don't like that. And
that potentially proves your theory already that the Hierophant is in fact an acolyte, because again, she does a really good job of like not like laying the plot bare, but of being like, if you're paying attention, here's something you might want to know.
True.
Which, you know, we like those kinds of fantasies. Anything else for 18?
Did we know, because okay, so in this chapter we find out that the second Harbinger was, what was the second one? The Pale Hand. Did we know that beforehand? Did they know that the Pale Hand? They didn't know the Pale Hand was there, so they didn't know the second Harbinger was.
I think they knew that the second Harbinger was the Pale Hand, but they obviously did not know who it was until.
No, I mean, did they know that the second Harbinger had come true?
Oh no, I don't think so. No,
okay.
I don't believe that they had.
All right.
All right. So moving on to 19. Ephira is the one, as Dawn mentioned, that Hector recognizes, and she's been captured by the sentry and is in jail. Hector and Jude question her about why she's there, what she's doing. They're basically trying to get her to confess that she is the Pale Hand, which she does not. Ephira recognizes Hector, and she's like, oh shit, this is the guy whose family I accidentally killed. But again, important to note that she does not at any point admit that she's the Pale Hand in this chapter. So she's playing that close to the vest.
Yeah.
Goodly so.
And I like what Katie Rose is doing here. So, I mean, all the way up until this point, Ephira, you know, she's kind of a sympathetic murderer. She only kills bad people. but now she's killed good people. So it kind of makes her a conflicting character. Is she still a heroine? Is she going to be an anti-hero? We don't know.
Do we even trust her points of view?
Yeah.
She's given her own chapters. She's officially become an unreliable narrator in terms of, like, normal Western morals.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. All right. Anything else?
No.
All right. Chapter 19 moves on to Hassan, which, as we mentioned in previous chapters, we're not a huge fan of him, but his chapters were important in this section, I felt like. So he returns to the Hirati Agora, which is like the marketplace, and he's with Kepri, and they are seeking out a person named Riza. And this guy's important because he has information on... Riza has info on what the Aerophant is doing to people who are graced that he captures. And so we learn that he is basically using this supernatural element called Godfire to literally burn the grace out of people. And it's akin to, like, someone's, like, soul being burned out of them. Like, they're, like, physically burned and all that, but they just do not have any will to live anymore. And it's terrifying. So if you're graced, this is not something that you want to happen to you. And they're trying to discuss where did this Godfire come from. They learn that he found it in the ruins of a temple in the desert. How would he know that that was there had he not been intimately involved in the church system? I mean, a lot of things about the Aerophant come up in this chapter. So he has since moved this Godfire to Nazira, which again is the capital of Herat, where Hassan is the crown prince. This chapter ends with Hassan learning that Kepri essentially plans to launch an uprising against the Aerophant with her and some random Herati refugees. You know, we get the sense that it's a very paltry crowd, and he's like, don't do that, guys. And of course, she's stubborn, and she doesn't really listen to him. So, anything on chapter 20 you wanted to say?
The only thing is that we don't know put the Godfire there.
Right.
We just know that it was just mysteriously found, like somebody had to put it there, and they knew what it was for.
Right.
So, I have a feeling that's going to come back into play.
Yeah, the fact that he knew what to do with it, it's like, oh, here's a burning substance.
Yeah.
Let me experiment on the grace. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. All right. So back to chapter 21 features Jude and Hector again. Jude confronts him about his past, and specifically the fact that he has met Ephira before, and she basically is the one who is responsible for killing his family. And then Hector is the one who says that he believes Ephira to be the harbinger, the second harbinger. Okay. So yeah, good call on that one. And he wants to kill her immediately. Like that's basically his plan for everything that is going on in this book. Let's just kill him. And then Jude reminds him of his loyalty to the Order, and that he's got to put his past behind him, otherwise he may be dead pretty soon.
He may be dead pretty soon.
Jude has a responsibility, and so does Hector. You know, they were literally just sworn in like 3 days ago. I mean, what's the timeline of this book at this point? So yeah. And then Jude spends most of the rest of that meaty chapter internally reflecting on his relationship with Hector and how their relationship has changed.
Yeah. So I think this chapter is a good chapter because it starts to get into some heavier themes.
For sure.
Where we have Jude, who's a little bit more black and white. It's like, I took an oath. This is my oath. This is my duty. And that's it. And Hector, he's finding some gray spots in there where he's like, well, you know, I'm out for revenge.
He's far more emotional. Yeah. Emotionally driven.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I think you can kind of think, who am I as a reader? Am I the Hector or am I the Jude?
For sure.
I think that's a pretty good theme, especially when you're reading with teens. Then you also mentioned that they kind of go into their personal feelings. And what I found interesting in this chapter is it's only really a couple of sentences. And I had to read it several times because I wasn't quite sure what was happening. And so they really are just they were swimming, and then they're lying down, and we also get this thing where Hector feels heart. He sees heartbeats or something. It's something to do with heartbeats because he's mentioned it several times with heartbeats. And as they're laying down, Jude is saying how his heart is about to jump out of his chest, and Hector turns and looks at him, and then it seems like Hector just gets up and walks away.
Yeah, that's literally what the book says. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if he was like, oh, this can't be, I'm in love with him too, but this can't be, so I'm gonna go, or is it I don't have the same feeling, so I'm gonna go. She doesn't really go into that, and we also don't get Hector's POV, so we have no idea what he's thinking and how he feels about Jude, which obviously is a choice that she's made, the author has made, and I'm not mad at it.
No.
I like that there was no physical contact. It was very much a mental thing, and it doesn't have to be physical to be enjoyable.
Indeed. Yeah, I am hoping, just because sometimes I do like it laid out in front of me, and I like both of their characters, so I kind of do hope she kind of like circles around and is like, here, reader, here's some confirmation one way or another. But yeah, that's just like a in the back of my mind little tiny wish list for this book, but I wouldn't be disappointed if she doesn't.
No.
Yeah. All right. Chapter 22. Hassan fills in Jude about the discovery of the Godfire. So he goes back to Jude and tells him, like, look, this is what we just found. And Hassan is feeling anxious because he wants to get out there and attack the Aerophant before more people suffer. So he, up until this point, has been this sort of like listless character who really doesn't have purpose, he feels. And he's, you know, what's the word? He's not outcast, but he's hiding, you know, he's not really supposed to be doing anything, and now he's like had this like massive destiny just like placed on his lap, and he wants to do something with it. So I think Hassan is also kind of like Hector in that he is more emotionally driven by like this like glorious burden that he now wants to confront. So later in the chapter, he's reading the history of Nazira, and he remembers that as long as their lighthouse stands on the shore, the Seif family will rule. And this is something to just like point out and to note, because on the cover it features a burning lighthouse. If you have the book, you can take a look and see that there if you haven't already noticed. I didn't notice until you pointed it out to me. I was just like, oh, that's a cool design. So he falls asleep while he's reading this history, and he sees this like showdown happening between the witnesses and Hassan's forces. So apparently somehow in his dream he has decided to go to Herat and fight the witnesses in the Aerophant. And there's Godfire, and he sees the guard or the order there helping them. And then he sees the witnesses' fire burn out, and he ascends to the throne. So he's woken up by Penrose and his aunt, who believe that he was having a nightmare, and he shares the dream with them. And they're like, oh my god, this is the vision.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for.
This is the vision.
This is the vision.
Poor Hassan.
Poor Hassan.
He wants so badly to be important.
Poor sweet Hassan.
Or not necessarily to be important,
no,
but to do something. Just stop sitting on his hands and to make a contribution that I don't think he had a vision. I think it's just a dream. And
look at how she sets up the scene. Mm-hmm. What is he doing directly before he falls asleep? He's reading about the history of his country. Mm-hmm. Okay, dreams are your brain's subconscious effort to sort things out that you've learned or done during the day. So it's like, yeah, guys, no.
Is this the chapter where they fall to their knees?
That is very general, and I do not know. I don't remember.
So he has, no. Never mind.
I don't think it is.
It's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's a lot of other stuff starts to happen.
Yeah.
So Penrose, in the next chapter, 23, Penrose goes and wakes up Jude because he needs to come and respond to Hassan's dream. But when Jude goes to wake up Hector, he has flown the coop.
He's gone.
And he's like, God damn it. Did we not just talk about this? He obviously knows where Hector went, so he tells Penrose everything and says, I have to go take care of this. And she's like, dude, send somebody else. He's like, no, you don't understand. This is something I've got to deal with. And Penrose also reminds him of his duty should Hector break his oath.
Yeah, he's got to.
So that is a massive bit of foreshadowing right there. Ooh. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah. It's kind of giving me
I'm
scared. Glass vibes where Manon had to...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, a difference in I don't know which podcast it was, but we were kind of complaining about Hassan and how he drops everything and was like, the order can wait, I must find Kepri. And I don't like that because, you know, you just met this girl, the order is important, you know, that's not realistic. But in Hector and Jude's situation, they've known each other for at least 10 years, I believe. He has feelings for him physically, but also as part of the order. He's like, I don't want him to make a mistake. So I can kind of understand Jude saying, look, Penrose, you got this. I gotta go deal with something. I don't think that's out of order.
At first it was almost comical to me that in the previous chapter when Hector and Jude were together, he was like, please don't tell my past to anybody, and then literally the next chapter he's like, hey Penrose, guess what? But he had to share that information to like you said, empower her to go back and take charge and calm the crowd, because they're gonna be like, where'd it go?
That's gonna come up again.
Right.
I feel like him telling Penrose, which she's a confidant, she raised him, she's gonna be like, I don't care if his fucking family did die. You gotta kill him. She's gonna and he might have to choose between Penrose and Hector that might come back at some point.
She's gonna help Jude make the choice that he needs to make, essentially. I feel like with this guy.
She already doesn't like Hector.
I know, she doesn't. I don't know, well,
it's not that she doesn't like him, she doesn't like what he does to Jude and how he like changes.
She's the little like good angel on Jude's shoulder, whereas Hector is the like bad angel. So he's like, navigating two different forces there. Chapter 24, Hector is confronting Ephira in prison, and he just is out there demanding to know how many people she's killed and who she is, like as in the Pale Hand. He threatens to hurt Beru unless she admits to what she is. So this is when she's like, okay, this is getting serious. Anything on 24 you want to add?
Yeah, so we have some more themes going on here. Destiny seems to be a pretty clear theme in this book.
They're really throwing that word around a lot.
The prophet is destined, and it's like a heavy destiny. He's destined. Hector has basically said, this is what I'm here to do. I am destined to kill you. And because Hassan feels he is destined to be the prophet, he has lied. I believe he's lied up to this point of this vision. So destiny,
I don't think he's doing it on purpose.
No, but I mean, just this pressure of his destiny. He's being told this is your destiny.
He's leaning into it.
Yeah, and that could be, destiny could be dangerous if you don't take care of it.
Moving on, chapter 25, we're back to Anton. We haven't seen him much in this section of chapters because there's just other stuff getting fixed, but he is still in prison. And so Hector, realizing that he's not getting anywhere with Ephira, pops on over to see Anton and says that, I'm part of the Order, I'm searching for the Pale Hand, any information that you have on the Pale Hand, I need from you. So Hector, being not a dumbass, makes a deal with Hector and is like, if you get me out of prison, I'll basically show you where Beru is. And so,
which is a bit of a dick move.
Yeah, man.
But I mean, Anton's desperate. He's got to get out of town. So whatever he's dealing with is important.
He's just go. So full of fear. That poor character. He's like stressed. My poor little baby Anton.
One thing that Anton, I don't know if this is important, but Anton can feel Esha, feel it. So he describes Hector's Esha as like a scrape of hard rock on steel. So that immediately makes me think that inherently Hector is not a good person. Yes, he is seeking revenge. He has been wronged. That's understandable, but is he like deep down not a good person, or is this revenge kind of taking over his Esha and it makes him not a good person? Like,
well, when I think about that phenomenon of like stone on steel, it's not a good feeling, but it has a purpose. So I think that Hector is not necessarily like inherently bad, but he is a tool. Like literally, he's being sharpened for a purpose. God knows what. I have not read past chapter 29, so I'm not, I have no idea where Hector's character ends up going, but that is a very intentional image that she's putting in our minds, regardless. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because that's very important to note. All right, chapter 26. Jude shows up. The more people to the party. This is a happening prison. He shows up, and he's told that a prisoner is missing, but it's not Ephira. So he's like, that's weird. Not what I was expecting. Naturally, it's Anton, who has left with Hector. So Jude pops over to Ephira's cell and is like, please tell me what happened to Hector. And she says, he was going to kill me. Because she wants to prove to you, Jude, that she's the Pale Hand. And then she's afraid that he's going to go after her sister. So Hector, he's going after Hector, and she makes Jude promise that he will protect Baru. There's a lot of wheeling and dealing happening here. It's kind of difficult to keep track of it, but yeah. So she's still in prison. Jude leaves the prison to go deal with this out-of-control situation. Anything on chapter 26 you want to add?
No, it's just interesting to note that Ephira has not admitted she's the Pale Hand.
Yeah.
She's still denying it.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, and she made him, like, basically take another oath. Like, you, on your life, like, well, not your life, but, like, you honor the order. You have to honor
Oaths
our
are definitely
agreement.
a theme here, too.
Yeah.
A symbol, possibly, even. Chapter 27, back at Hassan's house, the guard finally meets up with Hassan to discuss his vision. But he notices that Hector and Jude are gone. And this is it. I really appreciate the tension that she is building in this book with just like little details like that. Characters noticing that someone else isn't where they're supposed to be, and like that's how snowballs happen. Like that's how secrets get out, and she is building that tension so flawlessly. I can't wait to see where this book goes. I'm sorry. Okay, so where was I? 27. He shares his vision, obviously, and then his aunt casually mentions, is this possible that it may just be a dream? And no one in the room is interested in hearing that at this point, but in this moment I believe that she is the voice of reason here, but we will find out. And then he now believes that he needs to return to Nazira and take on the witnesses, and Capri, of course, arrives. Where the heck she was, why she needs to be there, I'm not really sure, but that's the storyline that she's setting up for these two. And he tells her everything.
Well, she needs to, well, I guess technically she needs to be there because she was in his vision, right?
Right, but like, can we sort this out with the authorities before we go tell the one that we're interested in?
No, the order has to wait. Capri is important.
I hate that. All right. So he explains everything to her and basically tells her that I'm going to help you lead this army. We're going to overtake the witnesses with the order's help. It is on. And she's very excited.
Let's talk about the aunt again.
Yeah.
She doesn't show up very often. When she does, I think she's important. We've already established in the first podcast we did this that we don't trust the aunt.
Yeah.
We think she is a ne'er-do-well. So I wonder if she's like, because we think she is the bad guy, is she like saying, you are not the prophet? You like, because I don't want to kill you? Because if she's in on it, and he's like, oh, I'm going to lead the wars with the Hierophant, she might be like, oh, damn, I don't want to kill my nephew.
Right.
Maybe she's trying to warn him.
It could go both ways, because either she has information about the prophecy that she cannot share with Hassan and is trying to break it gently to him.
How would she know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just guessing at this point.
Yeah.
Because maybe she does care for him, and maybe she's not a double agent, but if she is, then she needs to keep him here so that she can continue to control the situation.
Yeah.
And if he's gone, I mean, that escalates the plan. So I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one thing I noted here is that the pacing is pretty good. I think you kind of mentioned that.
Yeah. You feel that a lot in this chapter.
You do. Because Hassan, she could have very well had these people sitting in Palace Athos for several chapters, but we're like midway through and he's like, let's go.
Yep.
It's time to go back. So she's moving along the plot, which I appreciate.
At a time that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, in this chapter, which was, I mixed my chapters up, but we have kind of expressed that Hassan is our least of the 5 characters, but he's starting to grow on me a little bit simply because he's not just some prince who wants to help but he can't because he's stuck. I kind of read that character before, but now you've mentioned that he feels like he has a purpose, and in this chapter, because he thinks he's the prophet and he has this vision, he now has people bowing to him, like, and it's not a figurehead bow. It's like, they believe in me vow, and I'm an important person and I can help and I can contribute. So I think it's kind of adding to his character. I like him a little bit more. He's still at the bottom of the list, but it's only because I've kind of read his character before. It's not because he's a bad character. He's not a new voice to me.
Yeah.
So, but he's starting to get something going, and he's very aware of it.
Yeah. So. And you mentioned earlier in the podcast that he's not driven by prestige or status or really some of these more shallow influences. Like, he genuinely does care about his people and his country and the good of, the world that he lives in. So I can appreciate that, but it's like you said, not really the most unique voice, but it's not dragging down the story like it was several chapters ago. So yeah. All right, chapter 28. These last two are big ones. Yeah. Anton and Hector go to Beru's hiding place, and they explain to her that Ephira's in prison because she's been waiting. She's like, what is happening to my sister? Something's wrong. They confirm that, essentially. And then Hector tells Anton to leave, but he initially refuses. But Beru's like, just go, it's fine. And so she talks with Hector, and he attempts to tell her that Ephira needs to tell the truth of who she is and be killed for it. And then she's like, well, here's the situation that actually happened with your family. And he tells her that she now needs to atone for her sister's actions. So there's a lot of, like, back and forth between who thinks what's right, who's, etc. And after a tussle, it's revealed that she has a dark hand mark on her body, meaning that she was dead and brought back to life. That's a big bit of information that we just got there. And then this means somehow that she is, in fact, the third harbinger who will bring about the Age of Darkness.
Yeah.
And Anton shows up again just as Hector is about to kill her, because, again, his plan for everything is to just kill him. Anton returns, helps her escape, and she gives him the train tickets that she bought in the previous set of chapters that we discussed, and tells him to get it to Ephira, because that's where they're going to try to meet up. He promises, but, he's Anton, so. Any notes on chapter 28?
Oh, there's lots of things in chapter 28.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a big bomb that she is dead, or she was dead. And Ephira is a necromancer. And I don't care what book, necromancy's bad.
Yeah.
Nobody likes the necromancer. So.
Accurate.
And so also what I kind of thought about going back to chapter 7 again, which apparently was also a very important chapter. I was wondering why Katie Rose threw in this necromancy wars.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? It just kind of came out of nowhere, and now I know why. So back in chapter 7, there was a necromancer king, I'll just call him the Necro King, 'cause that's a long word. He used the chalice. So if you remember, Ephira and Beru need the chalice so that she can, like, save Beru's life. But this Necro King used the chalice to raise the army of the dead to take over Herat. So, because Ephira is looking for the chalice, she could very well say, oh, I can raise an army of the dead. And is she going to do the same thing that the Necro King did, which was to try and take over Herat? Hassan is the king of Herat. So is she going to be the villain now? Because now she's kind of still a heroine. But this book could very well do a switcheroo, and she can now become the villain over the Hierophant. She could either use the army to defeat the Hierophant, or she could use it to defeat the king. She could be the new villain. So I thought that was a pretty interesting twist that she just put on Ephira. Any predictions?
Nope. I am just enjoying it. I'm just reading it along.
I think that if Katie Rose really went there, she could. I kind of want her to make Ephira the villain and kind of use the chalice to be like, yeah, I raised my sister, but psych, I'm gonna take over the world now because I don't like you anymore or something. I mean, her and Hassan have not crossed paths at all in this story.
That's very important to know.
Yeah, I just now realized, like, they have not met. She's met everyone else but him. Well, no, she hasn't met Jude either. Yes, she has. She has. So it's just Hassan she hasn't met. So, that's interesting. All right.
All right, chapter 29. This is a good one, too. Anton blocks Hector from pursuing Beru so she can escape. And he tries to convince him that she's innocent, but Hector, of course, manages to get this train ticket out of of Anton's hands, and thus finding out where ultimately Beru is going, / where Ephira will end up. Jude arrives on the scene as this is all going down, and Anton has a massive physical reaction to Jude's presence. And what I mean by that is that, remember again, he can sense Esha, so he can, like, sense and suss out someone's soul. There was a lot of S's in that sentence. And how did he describe Jude's Esha? It was
familiar, right?
It was like, I felt like this wall of, like, light and fire was, like, coming upon him, and, like, it was this massive just realization.
Storm, like a gathering storm.
Yeah. And so that reminds the reader of what Jude said about when he met Hassan, in that he felt nothing when he met him, and that he thought and he believed that he would have a reaction like the one that Anton just described to us. So it foreshadows to me that in the next set of chapters we may find out that maybe little Hassan isn't the prophet.
Yeah.
Maybe not yet, but I think that Jude is going to have a reaction to Anton's presence as well, and really start to have him question himself and his decisions.
But he also said that he felt familiar, which means he's met him before.
In a past life?
Him before.
I mean, what are we talking about?
We don't know if this story has different dimensions. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But in his dream, I think it was chapter 6, Anton is dreaming of a hooded figure. So, was that Jude that he's dreaming of? Did he...
Because they do wear, like, cloaks, right?
Okay, so he, what is this? No, maybe not. One thing I find interesting about Katie Rose is that she uses the words over and over and over again, which are important. So I've already talked about how she used the word heartbeat. And in chapter 6, this is the chapter where Anton is woken up by Ephira, and he says that he felt her Esha. It was unfamiliar. And then we get this dash. So then he uses in chapter 29 the word familiar. So it's like she's using these words over and over again to kind of remind you.
So maybe this, like, unfamiliar versus familiar is not literal familiarity, but more of, like, a sense of their goodness or badness.
Okay.
Like, familiarity it implies safety, it implies positivity and goodness. So maybe that's what the distinction is?
Well, he said Ephira's Esha is muted flutter of moth's wings. Not the one he feared. No, never mind. But yeah, so her Esha is flutter. So what would that?
Unsettled.
Okay. Yeah, I like going back to this chapter. She does use metaphors quite well.
Yeah, she's a good writer.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the book a lot.
I am too. Right, well, that is it for this section of chapters. I thought this was a really good section. I mean, we are in... Sometimes I find with fantasy that, like, the middle really drags. And everything's revealed in the beginning and the end. And the pacing is really, so far, really solid in this book, where we're still in the early middle, but this section of chapters ends, like, pretty much in the middle of the book. And the pacing has been on point, and...
Yeah, that's important. We read a lot of fantasies, and this is usually where it starts to poop out. Yeah. Because the pacing is bad. You're either not getting information that you need, or...
The characters have stopped, changing and transforming.
And she's got a lot of characters here. She essentially has 6 characters that she has to handle, and she's doing it quite well.
Yeah, she is.
They each have their equal amount of time. Even Hector, who doesn't have his own chapter, he's developed really well.
Right.
But yeah, I do like the pacing a lot. I like the little hints that she's dropping in for us that we can always go back and refer, little metaphors. So she's clearly thought her story out quite well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. And hopefully Sunday, I will have chapters 30 through 50. That is the next section that we will be discussing. I'm hoping that you guys are also enjoying this book, and we will catch you in the next podcast.